Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We're having a few technical difficulties with our video today, but at least we have the audio working. And so you're in the right place today. Our webinar today is the hidden costs of going local with e-invoicing. My name is Jasmine O'Cutesy, and I'll be your host. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you've joined us before, welcome back. I'll review a couple of quick notes before we dive in today. Friendly reminder that today's discussion is for informational purposes only and is not legal or tax advice. On your screen is our safe harbor policy. Please take a moment to review. We are recording today's event, so if you want to listen again or share it with a colleague, you'll receive the recording within the next 24 hours. The console you're looking at can be customized, so feel free to move or resize the windows, and the additional resource section contains the slide deck and other related links. There are several ways to engage with presenters and fellow attendees today. First, please submit any questions you have for the speakers in the Ask a Questions box. Feel free to submit any troubleshooting questions there as well, and we'll help you out. Second, you can join our attendee chat by clicking the icon at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to introduce yourself, network, and discuss today's topic there. All right, let's meet today's presenters. We are joined today by two Avalara experts. We welcome Matt Hammond and Jason Palmer. So Matt, feel free to introduce yourself first and then pass it over to Jason, and then go ahead and take it away for today's discussion.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. My name is Matt Hammond. I'm the General Manager of our e-invoicing and live reporting division. And my background is over 20 years helping companies with their e-invoicing projects. I'm thrilled to be joined today with Jason. Please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, so my name is Jason Palmer. I'm a senior e-invoicing expert at Avalara. I've been in the industry for about 5 years, helping businesses globally, but for the last 17 years I've worked in the field of accounts payable and purchase pay automation and order to cash automation as well. So I've got a broad depth of the whole e-invoicing life cycle, so it's lovely to meet you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Let's kick things off. So, the compliance wave is breaking. What do we mean by that, Jason?
I agree. It's coming in fast, Matt, and as the saying goes, you're either surfing the wave or you're getting wiped out by it. But over the last years, you've probably heard the why behind all of this. At the highest level, it's about governments closing the tax gap and also helping businesses digitalize their processes. I kind of call it the Nordic mentality, where sending e-invoicing is becoming the standard practice. Now, over the last couple of years, the EU VAT gap was nearly around 90 billion, thanks to digital reporting and e-invoicing. This could drop to around 75 billion next year, and that's a huge recovery. And that's being driven purely around the real-time compliance aspect. Some people I speak to still see this as a kind of a necessary evil, but if you kind of take a step back and zoom out, it's actually accelerating digitalization. It's kind of making finance, tax, and IT teams more connected and more automated than ever. And when I kind of first joined the industry, it was mostly Latin America and Italy that were introducing the mandate. But if we kind of fast forward to today, there's now over nearly 60 countries with an e-invoicing mandate in play. And, you know, right on our doorstep right now is Belgium going live in January. Then we have Poland is going to hit with 2 waves in February and April next year. And as you can see on the slide, there is no sign of this kind of slowing down. We've got France hot on our heels in September, and even UAE are going to be introducing a pilot next July in preparation of their mandate, which will go live in January 2027. So my question to you, Matt, really is a few weeks back, Rachel Reeves announced that the UK is going to introduce an e-invoicing mandate. I believe it's set to be 2029. Firstly, do you think it will happen? And what model do you think they'll adopt?
Yeah, so after almost a year of consultation, the UK, as you rightly said, have now announced that April 2029, they will be releasing or launching their mandate. I don't think it'd be delayed. I think they've got fair window. I work on an advisory group that has fed into the consultation process, and they have been treading this one quite carefully. They've been quite methodical about it. They're very keen to learn from the mistakes or things that happen in other countries and their rollouts that have been suboptimal. Particularly top of mind is making sure that companies don't, feel any friction or suffer as a result, particularly as it relates to costs and small businesses. They're very keen for everyone to get the maximum benefit from e-invoicing, and for them to experience the least possible friction in the migration. So not a betting man, but if I was, I would say that we're not going to see a Poland or Italy type scenario where you've got a centralized system. I would say that we expect to see some kind of leveraging of existing technologies as it relates to e-invoicing we see today.
Okay, and you're not getting away from this one, but do you think it'll be, well, is it your favourite mandate? Do you think it'll be your favourite mandate?
Well, as I helped to advise a little bit on this one, I'd have to say yes, but it's not here yet. So let's see what happens when we see the full contents of this mandate published.
Cool.
So go to any conference that's got e-invoicing on the agenda, and you are bound to hear this tactical versus strategic debate. It's constantly ongoing. Everyone seems to have a story around it or an opinion about it. I guess we're no different. So let's kick things off, Jason. How would you describe a tactical approach?
Well, to me, everyone kind of defines it differently, but to me, tactical means kind of focusing short-term or reactive actions. So what I mean by that is you're kind of fixing immediate problems rather than thinking strategically or about the big picture or the long-term impact. That's what kind of tactical really means to me. What's your kind of definition of strategic, Matt?
So strategic for me is taking a common approach that often involves having a single or a very limited number of vendors, and then wrapping a more of a global approach, a single approach to mandates, and then possibly introducing as well and taking the opportunity for finance transformation as well. So it's not seen as a kind of commodity, one and done, let's get it off my desk type address of these mandates. So with so many mandates coming, it's really important that we do take the right approach and do consider what our approach is. What we tend to see in the market is those companies who consistently take a tactical approach to these mandates seem to end up playing what I call a mandate whack-a-mole, constantly on the back foot, always in a kind of reactive mode. And what that generally sort of results in is, we like to call that the mandate's controlling you rather than being in control of the actual process. And if you have anything to add on that, Jason?
Well, I kind of agree, actually. I mean, when mandates drop, I get it. Like the human instinct is to grab whatever local solution there is just to get this off your plate. But that's just a quick fix. You're not actually solving the bigger issue. And I've seen this firsthand. So you're definitely not setting yourself up for the next wave if you focus tactically with what's coming. That's kind of my take on it. So the key difference with a strategic approach is simple. You're the one in control. It's not about ticking boxes for compliance. Strategic thinking means embedding e-invoicing into the broader finance transformation initiative. And that's really where you'll kind of unlock the true value. You start sending and receiving invoices in near to real time. Data errors drop dramatically because a 5 is always a 5, an S is always an S when you send it electronically, where converting analog into digital, you get those errors. And then I guess more importantly, and the reason why governments are doing this is also around the fraud. The risk of fraud drops as well when transactions are validated through either a secure network or a government tax system. And kind of, to be honest, I haven't really met any customers who wish to manage multiple vendors with different rules, integrations, and timelines. So what does a strategic approach really mean? It basically means fewer vendors, a cleaner integration, and also that one source of truth. And with that, you stay firmly in control.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Bit of a technical issue there, Matt. So I guess my question to you, Matt, is why are so many companies taking a tactical approach?
Well, benefit of hindsight's a wonderful thing. It would have been, again, wonderful if the government said, all got together and published exactly what they're going to do at a single point in time, so everyone can see exactly what's coming in the future. Now, clearly that's wishful thinking. That would never happen. And that didn't happen. And that's why we've ended up with, one of the reasons we've ended up with so much of a tactical approach across the board here. Because we see one mandate come up over this part of the world. Okay, it's an outlier. It's a local problem. We'll let that country deal with it and get a solution accordingly. And then another one appears over here. All right, well, it hasn't really. Okay, we'll let them do the same, and that cycle, sort of drips on. We allow the local markets to keep dealing with it because it hasn't, in our mind, reached critical mass. And I think that's probably where a lot of companies are right now. They're looking around thinking this is, reaching critical mass. We also need to remember as well that, when we're addressing these mandates, it's done to the government's deadlines. It's not done to our deadlines. People don't have endless resources and people and budgets sat around, waiting to address mandates, and create a strategy around it. The mandates come in. Some of them we get very short deadlines, and we've just got to react. So we do end up with quite a lot of short-term thinking, quick fixing. As you say, just get it done, get it off a plate and move on. We weren't expecting it. We didn't want it. Let's just move on from here.
Yeah, I mean, you covered some good points there, Matt. And I think from my perspective, and it's good to be honest, a tactical approach, might be fine if you're just operating in one or two countries. But at the moment you're managing compliance across multiple jurisdictions, that's when the complexity kind of spikes, and also so does the costs and also, time, that starts working against you. So from what I've seen, local solutions might look cheap at like the first glance, but managing 5 different systems, that's where the hidden costs really show up from that side of things. So, Matt, from your side, what are the kind of the downsides of a tactical approach?
So, the downsides, it's really it's building out this tech Frankenstein effectively as you go across the world. You're just collecting up different solutions. Those solutions all have different abilities, different capabilities, different abilities to interact with your processes. What you tend to find is if you're using lots of different providers with different capabilities, your one global process that you wanted to maintain starts to erode, new failure points introduced, manual touch points. And then obviously you've got the maintenance of all these different systems, and then harmonization challenges. We all know, most of us know that in Europe we've got VIDA on the horizon, which promises to harmonize all of these different models at some point in time. Best guess is sort of 2035. But the reality is, if you've gone out and chosen a different vendor in each country, then when harmonization comes, that actually becomes more of a challenge than a benefit, because you've now got to harmonize across 18 different vendors or something like that.
Yeah, to add to that then, Matt, I think you're right on the previous slide. That each local solution does bring its own quirks, and there's no standardization, there's no shared dashboards, and like you said, there's no consistent way to train or support your team as well. So there are all the complexities that are added to every business that comes across this. But when you're sort of switching to strategic, what does that actually mean to be strategic from your perspective?
So yeah, as I said in the beginning, the start point for everyone is usually one global provider or a couple of global providers to address everything in a uniform way across the world. One thing I'd always say when people are, go out looking for a global provider is to really qualify what's underneath that global solution. What we tend to find is that those global solutions are actually just a big collection of local solutions, last mile providers, acquisitions, etc. So straight out the gate, you lose the benefit of actually getting a global provider, because actually you're interacting with a whole bunch of local providers, and often with a lot of different integration points. Which segues onto our next point. I mean, most people have been through this journey once, twice, or even 10 times, will know that these projects, that they rise and fall with the implementation. So having a strategic approach is to start to really understand what are my integration and my implementation requirements, because everyone's different. Everyone will have a different tech stack. Everyone will have different resources available to them internally, very different expertise internally. We need different external support. So, opting for a one-size-fits-all implementation isn't really what I would call a strategic approach. So it's having something that can really meet you and your needs in order to have the best possible implementation. And then looking past the mandates. So mandates, yeah, absolutely, we have to get live. But that, to me, solving a mandate isn't really success. Success is looking at the innovation that can be brought, the finance transformation, the process improvements, because upstream and downstream, because things are now electronic. It's leveraging that really makes the difference.
And then using kind of your knowledge and experience, Matt, I mean, what are the kind of benefits of being strategic?
So I would say that one of the biggest benefits is, as we mentioned, being in control. So you're ready to address mandates. One of the challenges of these mandates is, going through the vendor assessments, etc. That's time consuming, it's costly. But if you've already got a vendor, it doesn't really matter how short the window is from the government's giving you. You can take all of that cost and time out of the equation. So you're in a lot more comfortable position to address mandates. You've also got a unified way of working across the globe. So typically what you'd see when you've got a global solution is that after you've done your first country, your second country, you're likely to be able to recycle about 80% of what you've done. I'm talking on averages here, obviously, but you're likely to be able to recycle a huge part of what you've done. So you're not reinventing the wheel, as I said before, having this IT project from the ground up in each country. Now, if you've got an accelerator, if you've a connector, something like that, that will also improve those metrics as well. And back to that point about leveraging benefits that are in the mandates, what we tend to find is working with a single partner or a couple of preferred providers that really start to understand your business, understand your processes. When you do reach that point where it's like, okay, I need to start getting more value from this, I'm going to see this as a precursor or a push to start finance transformation. If you're working with a big collection of random providers, then you're not going to get much benefit from them towards that goal. But if you're working, let's say, with a single or a couple of strategic partners who start to understand you, you'll really start to realize those goals a lot easier. So, Jason, I think it's clear the benefits of the strategic approach, but I think it's one of those things easier said than done. So I don't know if you have something for us in terms of how we can create this and formulate this strategic approach.
Hello there, Matt. I'm sorry about this. I think that Jason dropped off this call by mistake. It's always tough, you know, in different time zones calling in to the US. And so we'll see if he's able to join back in. But if you'd like to forward a few of these slides to continue your discussion, you're more than welcome to.
I can carry on from here. It's okay. So I'll pick it for Jason. So when we're trying to create a global project, a global strategy, we need to know who's going to be leading it and who's going to be owning it. Again, go to any conference, any forum, and you'll hear this constant debate about who should own the project. Should it be tax? Should it be IT? Should it be finance? It seems to be passed around like a bit of a hot potato. And this passing around of a bit of this hot potato is often why companies do struggle to get the project off the ground from a global point of view, and why they retain this strategic approach. My advice: not every company is the same, and you know everyone's different. But I would say where the mandates are heading, this should be a finance project. It's more and more entailing automation and invoices than it is the reporting of taxes. I would say finance, but every company is different. We also need to bring all of our stakeholders. So great, we've got an owner, but we now need to create a stakeholder group. And this stakeholder group seems to be growing almost by the quarter. Every time we see a new mandate, new complexities, new stakeholders at the table. But at a minimum, these days, you're looking at AP, AR, ERP team, tax team, procurement, and others. Now, the challenge is those stakeholders, and that's the minimum, they rarely come together for projects in the past. So this can be quite a new venture for all of those teams to work together. We also have to remember, everyone's got different buying criteria about what they're looking for, particularly if you look at the juxtapose of AP and AR, what they're looking for in a provider can be very, very different things. So you've got those guys could be pulling in different directions. Everyone's got their own KPIs. So people will be looking at this through a very, very different lens, depending on what department they're from. And as I said, bringing all that together is quite difficult. That's why I would always recommend about making sure you align on the requirements up front, so less is debated as you go through, because, well, we said this is a clear requirement, this is they're scoring X, Y, and Z, and then it becomes less of a debate later. So then the final pillar, I'd say, to get this off the ground is how is this is going to be funded. What we generally find is this is almost like a circular debate that happens. So it's generally a group that want to raise this as a strategic project. They want to have a uniform approach to this, so that they will initiate it. Then they'll go back to the opcos, the different countries, and the countries will say, well, if you're going to choose a provider, you need to pay for it. And then group will say, well, if you're going to get the benefit, you should pay for it. And then the country comes back and says, well, I found a provider that's a bit cheaper, I want to go with them. And you have this constant debate. Pretty much every large account that I work with gives me war stories around this debate. Understand it's going to happen. Solving for it, expecting it, is one of the really great ways to make sure you remove another point of friction from getting your strategic project off the ground. So I don't know if Jason is back. Yay. Okay, Jason.
Yay,
so,
sorry about that.
That's all right. How can Avalara help you?
Oh, the right time for me to drop in. Avalara has helped over 43,000 businesses globally because we're different by design. Where most solutions in the market are stitched together region by region, and you kind of touched on this, Matt, earlier in the slides. Mainly through acquisition, they're kind of patched together. Where Avalara is different, as it delivers one unified platform that scales across all your countries and mandates. So, in effectively not reinventing the wheel every time that you see with other organisations. If I was to kind of break this down a bit further, our global pricing is predictable. It's based purely on the transactions and support. There's no headache around the country setups, the legal entity licenses, document type connectivity licenses, all the different articles that you see with other solutions. It's the simplest pricing model in the industry. Secondly, from a global roadmap perspective, we are always monitoring the mandates and staying ahead of the wave. We've got a compliance team that's constantly not just monitoring what the mandates are active now, but what's coming, not necessarily in the next 12 months, but what's being spoken about in 24 months' time as well. So we're always one step ahead in that regard. And then from a global partner ecosystem, we've got over 50 certified implementation partners who understand our customers' ERPs. They understand the industry, and so our customers can scale with confidence. And then finally, global application, and we both touched on this in the previous slides. It's built around one login, one interface, one compliance dashboard, and more importantly, one source of truth. That's great for tax, finance, and IT people. So anyone that's involved in the whole invoice lifecycle, it really benefits them. And this is really how you future-proof. It's not just thinking about the next mandate. You need to start thinking about the next 20 mandates, because this is coming thick and fast. And then, you can take my word for it, but everything we've touched on today is supported by the IDC. They're a global tech analysis organization. And as you can see, the quote on the screen there on the slide from the IDC program manager, Adita, and I'll give you a moment to read that. Excellent. Well, I think that's it's a wrap up from our side. We'd just like to ask you a quick question, really. As you can see, there's a poll on the screen. Just two options. Would you like to follow up from Avalara, and then just make your selection now, please?
Perfect. Well, I think that we are ready for some Q&A. And so we have a couple questions that have come in from the audience. The first one is, what internal effort does a global rollout require, and who owns it? So I don't know if Matt or Jason, you want to take that one?
I could have first stab at that. I said my opinion is that finance should own this, but I said every company is different. In terms of the effort involved, it really is how long is a piece of string. There's so many different stakeholders who have to be involved, and every company, again, it is different. What I would say is it's more about the structure that you put in place, the project structure, the governance. One tip I would always give people is having a very strong project manager. Who, and I know this is not always possible, who doesn't sit within any of the stakeholder teams. So almost like you're independent person who sits who doesn't sit with any of the teams. So it can be that independent voice, because there is always going to be disagreements and challenges, and everyone pulling in different directions. And that strong leader helps to cut through all of that. Jason, you've got anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point, actually. And funny enough, I was asked this question a few days ago, and that business felt it was like tax was the main focus. It should own it, and they didn't want to own it in that regard, because they know it affects multiple different departments. But I think you touched on a very key point there, Matt. It's finding someone that's mutual, really, and that's important, because if it's solely led by one department, as humans, we're only going to think naturally about our requirements, our processes. And because e-invoicing affects the whole life cycle in invoice, you've got to make sure you get the right solution that not only makes you compliant, but drives those business benefits from an automation perspective, from a compliance and a validation perspective as well. But I think typically, if I was being honest, I think where I find most people that own it is kind of around the indirect tax departments, but someone's got to definitely own it.
Perfect. Thank you both for your input there. And just a reminder to the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in that Q&A section. We'll definitely get to you. If we run out of time today, we'll be sure to follow up. But I do see a second question here, and that is, can we phase out the rollout starting with just a few countries?
I'd say yes.
Sorry. Both of us are too keen there, Matt. I'll let you go, buddy. Sorry.
Go on, I'll go first. So yeah, I mean, by all means, I mean, when you look at where people get to with a strategic approach, so I don't think there's many companies out there, certainly that I've met, who have gone day one. We're the wise owl. We're going to start with a strategic approach. What you tend to see is people start on the tactical, as I said, because you don't know what you don't know about the future. And then all of a sudden reach a compelling event. Something goes wrong, or someone's just, CIO's pulling their hair out going, what on earth are we doing? All these different solutions hanging off our ERP, or someone's actually started to calculate that, well, the internal cost of onboarding all these vendors and having all these different IT projects, and we're spreading all our investments out across 10, we can get economies of scale if we've got one. Everyone reaches that point. At some point in time, and then they start to look at it about, right, how do we unpick this? And the cold reality is that whatever's coming, in the future has the priority. And then when we get gaps between the mandates, what you tend to find is people start to swap out the countries that they've done with the local providers, and then start to bring them in phases. So bit by bit, bring it into the global standard, if you like. And some of that timing will be down to, let's say, gaps between mandates. Some of it will be timed around when the contracts expire that you have with those local providers. And some of it's down to negotiation with the local opcos who don't want to let go of their local solution. So yeah, that would be my input. Jason, if you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, it's a common thing that a lot of the customers that I've worked with and working with right now is they kind of look at this from a strategic perspective. They look at all the countries where they have legal entities, and then they kind of prioritize this into waves. And much like you said, Matt, they'll focus purely and primarily on where the mandate's driven, so it's like a compliance driver. And then once they've gone live with that, then they'll start looking at backwards compatibility on the mandates that they've had local providers, but then also they extend the reach. And what I mean by that is, they start realizing that actually, they've going live in Belgium, but going live with an e-invoicing network, if that's sat behind a PEPL network, then they can start making those automation benefits as well. So they start then bringing that into the mix. So to answer your question, yes, you can start this on like a country by country approach, but where we've seen the biggest success is firstly looking at where your footprint is and picking a couple of countries, but then looking outside of compliance, look at automation as well, look at what's behind the PEPL network, the DBN Alliance network as well, and that's where you'll start to get a lot of the benefits as well through an e-invoicing network.
Perfect. And the third question for either of you today is, how do we compare the cost of our current tools versus switching globally?
So I'll go first again, if that's all right. So yeah, I mean, it's a good point, because when you look at a lot of, I'm generalizing here, but a lot of local solutions or one country solutions, let's call them, then you will find probably like for like, they might be a bit cheaper. I say might, you may well find that country dependent, obviously, when you compare it to a single global provider. The big thing to calculate is the total cost of ownership, which is also the most subjective part, because you can easily compare and contrast transaction fees, etc. That's almost the easy bit. The harder part is the subjective bit. So as I said, that the cost of going out there and doing a vendor assessment, the cost of then onboarding, and negotiating with said vendor. Then you've got there's always going to be an IT project from the ground up. That's a big internal cost as well, of time and resources. It's more the indirect cost, but I appreciate that they're the hardest, and also the risk as well. You tend to find the global providers will have all the accreditation, will have backup, localization, all the things that will give a large organization peace of mind, and business continuity as well. At the end of the day, invoices are the lifeblood of every company. Jason, do you have anything to add?
All right. And for the fourth question here, can we reuse existing mappings, or are we starting from scratch?
The short answer would be yes, but it would depend how you've been set up. So it depends what your existing providers ask you to do. So some providers will ask you to map to the government standard, and they're just going from here to here and just acting like a gateway effectively. Then others will say, well, map to our internal format, our special format, and then that will cover you for multiple countries. So two different providers might have their two different internal formats. So there will be some change needed there. I wish I could give you a very simple, precise answer, but there isn't one. I say it depends what the first providers ask you to do. But by and large, there is always something you can recycle going from one provider to another.
Yeah, I guess just to add. Yep. Yeah, I guess just to add to that, I mean, that's the importance of going strategic, really, is because once you've built that format out with that provider and that partner that's supporting you globally, then you can look to reuse it as each country unfolds, because then you're kind of just doing that gap analysis and then just adding those additional mapping fields for that specific country that requires those fields. Whereas we're looking at this kind of like tactically, and different vendors solving different problems, and they work, like Matt said, they work off different formats themselves. Some will be behind a UBL, some will have their own unique format themselves, some will be XML. So that's where the complexity adds from that side.
Perfect. And the last question I see here is, will this force changes to our ERP workflows or setup?
So again, that's where it comes down to having a vendor that can really work with you, and that has that breadth of being able to support ERPs, workflows, bring in additional value, different functions. They're not just a commodity vendor saying, well, I can move your transaction from here to here and then I'm done. You need to look at, well, are they capable, or have they got a connector for my ERP that can save me an awful lot of time, and save me having to do work in each country because the connector's pulling out the required data. How well can they connect to my AP workflow? If I'm running AP workflow, as many companies do, that sits outside the ERP, so that needs to be connected up when the mandate has AP as part of it. It's really important to qualify there, because when you think about e-invoicing for automation's sake, there's a huge amount of benefits that are kind of synonymous with e-invoicing. Low sort of error rates, straight through processing is really high numbers of invoices per rep. But when you move to mandated invoices, that just doesn't come as standard. It's what the provider can do around the incoming documents to really get the benefits out of e-invoicing in accounts payable that we're used to seeing on the automation side. Jason, you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think you've covered perfectly, Matt, from that side.
Wonderful. Well, I believe that's all that we have for today's session today. Before we close, here's a quick look at what is coming up in our webinar series. Our next webinar is next Tuesday, where we'll discuss the key 2026 tax changes and tariff updates. You can register for that one now using the link in the resource section. And then a sneak peek for 2026, we'll continue offering our bi-weekly trade and tariff updates, and we'll also cover AI breakthroughs and what they mean for tax automation. In February and March, we'll review ELR readiness and our new AvaTax enhancements to help streamline compliance. But that concludes today's webinar. So thank you very much to our presenters and to our audience for joining. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. It's lovely to meet you. Have a good day.